Hello students, this is your Bhushan sir. Hope all of you are fine and safe at home. Take care of your health during this pandemic time. Fine students, in previous sessions we were discussing about the type study or representative organism of phylum Annelida, that is Ferretima postuma, commonly called as the earthworm. And today's class we are going to understand the digestive system of the earthworm. The objective of today's session is to study the digestive system of the earthworm. Contents again includes the digestive system of the earthworm. Generally, when we look at the digestive system of an organism, it is a metabolic process in which the food is taken in by the process of ingestion, and with the help of enzymes in our body system, the food gets digested. We call it as digestion stage, which occurs with the help of various groups of enzymes, during which the complex food molecules will be broken into the simpler absorbable molecules of the food. Complex food molecules will be broken to form simpler food molecules which can be easily absorbed by our body system. This is the second stage, which we call it as the actual assimilation or digestion process. The third stage is absorption. Absorption is a stage wherein the digested food is taken into the blood system or circulatory system, which will transport these food molecules to every cells of the body, and this stage we call it as absorption stage. After the process of absorption, whatever the undigested waste is left out, that waste is thrown out of the body by the stage called as egestion. So, we have 4 stages of digestion, which includes ingestion of food, digestion of food, absorption of nutrients and the digested food, and excretion or egestion of the undigested waste of the system. Here in earthworm also we find the 4 stages of digestion process, which takes place in a particular system of organs or a group of organs, which we call it as the digestive organs, and the system we call it as digestive system. And today's example that we are going to understand under the earthworm category is Ferretima. Earthworms are generally found in damp or moist soil. They feed on the soil particles, they crush the soil particles and releases the nutrients that are present embedded within the soil particles. Those nutrients will be absorbed by the body system, and rest of the soil particle, which is ground into a fine paste of soil, will be thrown out along with some nutrient compounds. So, earthworms will feed on the soil particles. Such organisms which feeds on the soil particles is called as soilivorous. The second is the same earthworm, when it comes in contact with, or when it comes across in its movement, the dead or organic matter, which includes leaves or waste of the organisms or dead organisms, etc., these earthworms will feed on those organic matter also. And since it feeds on the dead organic matter, it is called detrivorous. So, earthworms, since it feeds on soil, we call it as soilivorous. Since it feeds on the dead organic matter compounds, we call it as detrivorous. And after it intakes these food, it will digest, it will throw out the fine paste in the form of castings, which is nothing but the undigested food of the digestive system. Thereby, the earthworms are commonly called as the organisms which increases the fertility of this soil. So, they feed on soil particle, they loosen the soil. Second, they digest or grind the soil particles into fine paste, so that the nutrients which are embedded within the soil particles are exposed to the plants that grow. Because of this phenomenon, the earthworms are commonly called as nature's plowman, because it digs the soil like a farmer. And it is also called as farmer's friend, because it will bring the underlying layers of the soil to the topmost layers, so that it will be easily available for the plants. And in India, we do have two varieties of earthworms, which are referred as Ferritima and Lumbricus. Down in the picture, students, you can see towards the left side is Ferritima and towards the right side is Lumbricus variety of earthworm. The digestive system of earthworm comprises of two parts. Part number one is alimentary canal or digestive canal. It includes a group of organs which will start from mouth, ends with the anus. So, this group of organs that starts with mouth, ends with anus, together corresponds to the alimentary canal or digestive canal. The second part it includes is the digestive glands. Glands are the compounds which are, the units which are responsible for the synthesis of enzymes or secretions in simple. So, we do have two parts, one is the alimentary canal, the second one is digestive gland. Alimentary canal, as far as the earthworm is concerned, it is called complete digestive system. Reason is that it starts with the mouth, ends with the anus. Mouth involves in the intake of food or ingestion of food, and anus will involve in the addition of the undigested waste from the digestive canal. And as we have discussed in the introduction, digestive system here also includes those four major steps. Number one, intake of food or ingestion, digestion of food with the help of enzymes. Third one is the absorption of the digested food, then addition of the unwanted waste that are present within the digestive canal. So, down in the picture, students, you can see just a representation of the alimentary canal system and its position. First, let us understand digestive canal of the earthworm. Students, the alimentary canal in earthworm is very long, elongated. It is muscular because it is made up of muscles. It is straight because the parts are present one below the other. The organ system includes the organs of digestion which are present one below the other, starting from mouth to the anus region. Hence, it is called straight. It runs between the segments of first and the last. As we know, the first segment of the earthworm body, we call it as peristomium. The last segment we call it as anal segment or pygidium. So, between these two segments, we have the digestive canal placed. When we look at the digestive canal, which is tubular or tube-like, does not show the similar diameter all through the length. For example, starting from mouth till the anus, the digestive canal, what the organism possesses, is not same. It doesn't have the similar diameter. Instead, here and there are bulgings. The diameter varies. It increases, imparting certain parts for the digestive system. So, even though digestive system is tubular, its diameter is not same. Students, here is a diagram down which you people have to practice for your exam if at all they ask the question on digestive system. So, this diagram alone you will have to concentrate. Rest of the diagrams or images, whatever I have shown in the present study or session, you need not have to practice, but try to practice only this particular diagram, and parts which are related to digestive system alone you can mention. Now, the diagram may look a bit complicated, but it is very easy to remember. Here, when you understand the alimentary canal or digestive canal of the earthworm, you will have to remember three important things. Number one, name of the part of the digestive system. So, part of digestive system you should remember. Number two, position of that particular organ in the digestive system. Otherwise, in simple to say, in which particular segment of the body you find this particular organ. So, position of the organ you are supposed to understand. Third one is its function. So, three things you will have to remember. Number one, name of the organ. Number two, position of the organ. Number three, function of the organ. So, that is about the importance of alimentary canal. That makes you to remember it very easily. Here is a table which includes name of the digestive canal part, or we call it as the part of the digestive system, and in the segment in which it is present towards the right side. For example, here mouth, it is present in the first segment. Buccal cavity, the second part of the digestive canal, which is present between second and third. Third part is the pharynx. It shares the part of third segment and the fourth. Esophagus from fifth to seventh. And there is one part called as gizzard, which is present between 8th and 9th segment. Stomach is a part which is present extending from 9th segment to 14th segment. And intestine, it starts from the 15th segment to the last but previous segment, and the last part of the digestive canal is anus. It is present in the last segment. Generally, when we have understood the morphology of earthworm, there we came to know that earthworm consists of somewhere between 120 to 150 number of segments on the body. But the position of the organs, when we look at, it follows this particular pattern in pheretima. So, remember the name of the organ, position of the organ. So, two important concepts of the digestive system that you will have to remember related to earthworm is seen in this particular slide alone. So, remember this particular concept. Okay? Now, we shall understand each of the part one by one. First one to start with is the mouth. Students, you might have remembered this diagram in my previous class of session, where we have discussed about the morphology or externals of pheretima. You remember the first segment of the earthworm body we call it as peristomium, and from which anteriorly there extends a fleshy lobe which we call it as prostomium. At this fleshy lobe down, it protects the opening of the mouth. And you know, mouth is the opening which is crescent shaped or half moon shaped, extended, very thin, present in the peristomium. When we look at the mouth structure, it is a wedge or crescent aperture. It is an opening which is of crescent shape or half moon shape, situated ventrally in the first segment called peristomium. Below this, below the structure of prostomium, because prostomium will protect the mouth down. When we look at the diagram or image above, the diagram towards the right side shows a black color spot indicating or labeling it as the mouth, and on top of it there is an extension like a beak which we call it as prostomium, the structure that protects the mouth down. The prostomium is very sensory in nature because there are many chemoreceptors or the special structures present sensitive for the chemicals in the area of prostomium, and that is very close to the mouth. So, what is the specialty of these chemoreceptors present in the prostomium? They help in identifying the chemicals and the food that is surrounded and eaten by the earthworm. So, sensation of the food by the chemoreceptors are present in prostomium is responsible for identifying the type of food that the organism is going to feed on. Then the mouth will lead into the next important digestive canal part called as the buccal cavity. So, remember students, food is intaken or it is ingested through the part of the mouth. So, this is the digestive canal part through which the food enters into the body of earthworm. Now, earthworms will feed on, as we understood, all kinds of food, especially of the soil particles and the dead organic matter. They also feed on the protozoans present in the soil, the decayed leaves present in the soil, and even the seeds that are available to the earthworms in the soil. So, they are soilivorous and they are detrivorous. The second important part that we are going to understand in the digestive system is buccal cavity. Students, when you look at the diagram above, mouth is the crescent shaped opening which is seen at the top, that continues as a narrow opening inside. This narrow tubular opening exactly we call it as the wider opening that we find continuing from the mouth is called as the mouth cavity or buccal cavity. In case of the earthworm, the buccal cavity or mouth cavity is very short. It is very wide and it is thin walled tube like. It is provided only with the muscles which are longitudinally placed. Longitudinal folds of muscles it has. You know why? What is the importance of the longitudinal folds? It is like a fold which is seen from anterior to posterior, a fold like this. Whenever the food is taken into this cavity, these folds will unfold so that the space for the cavity of mouth is extended. Are you able to understand? When the organism doesn't feed on the food, these folds of longitudinal area can be seen as the folds on the buccal cavity. But when the food is intaken, the folds will be extended. So, the cavity of mouth will expand so that the food gets accommodated into the structure of buccal cavity. And to have this phenomenon of flexibility, you have the longitudinal muscles also seen in this region of mouth cavity. Now, this mouth will extend from the segment number 2 to 3, and it is made up of two types of muscles, because I said when it is under resting stage, the muscles of contraction need to be present so that the folds are seen on the cavity of the mouth. When the food is taken in, they should expand. So, there should be contraction and expansion or elastic nature should be given for this part of buccal cavity. It is corresponded by the presence of two types of muscles called as protractile muscles and retractile muscles. Students, remember, two types of muscles are there present on the wall of mouth cavity, which is responsible for making the folds and unfolding during the process of feeding. So, it can protrude out or retract with the help of contraction of these muscles attached to the body wall. It helps in holding the food during the feeding and ingestion. So, this part of buccal cavity can come out, hold the food and can get into the original position. So, to that particular process, like how we have understood the structure of proboscis in the Digestia or planaria, similar way here also the mouth cavity involves, for which this protractile and retractile muscles are helpful. The food particles that are drawn into the buccal cavity when the pharyngeal cavity is enlarged by the contraction of muscles and that extend in the pharynx. Mean to say, the pharynx muscles will contract so that the space for the buccal cavity will be expanded. It is like the upper part gets expanded when the pharynx, the down part or continuous part of the buccal cavity down is the pharynx. So, that pharynx muscles will contract. So, down will contract, the upper part will expand. You might have understood the working condition of ventricles and auricles in the heart structure. When ventricles contract, auricles will expand. When auricles contract, ventricles will expand. Same process is done even here also during the intake of food. Students, remember, this buccal cavity now will continue down into a muscular, a very spacious organ called as the pharynx. Now, let us understand the structure of pharynx. Pharynx is a very thick-walled, pear-shaped chamber or organ which will extend up till the fourth segment of the body. It is the most effective organ because the organ of pharynx, when we look at, it is divided into an upper chamber and a lower chamber by means of a longitudinal fold. The structure of pharynx, which is pear-shaped, like a papaya shaped otherwise, it has a longitudinal fold. This longitudinal fold will divide the chamber of pharynx into an upper chamber and a lower chamber. The upper chamber we call it as dorsal chamber, lower chamber we call it as ventral chamber. The dorsal or upper chamber of pharynx has the secretory organ part, which we call it as pharyngeal bulb. Students, remember, this pharyngeal bulb is made up of muscles, connective tissue, blood vessels and even the secretory cells. Down in the picture, when we look at, pharynx towards its upper region shows the pharyngeal bulb. Now, this pharyngeal bulb gland, also called as salivary gland, where it is? It is present on the upper dorsal chamber. This salivary gland, when we say gland, it has to secrete something, some secretions. Here, the salivary glands are unicellular. A single cell will function in the secretion process, and those cells are called as chromophylls or chromophyle cells. So, there is a dorsal chamber on the pharynx. So, this dorsal chamber has got salivary glands. These salivary glands are unicellular. These cells are also called as chromophylls. These cells will secrete the secretion called as saliva. So, chromophyle cell secretes saliva. chromophil cells are nothing but salivary gland cells, and they secrete saliva. Saliva contains two important enzymatic compounds. Students, I will go a little slowly, try to understand them. Saliva of earthworm is produced at the pharynx region, okay, by salivary glands or pharyngeal bulbs. It forms the upper or dorsal chamber of the pharynx. The organism now starts producing saliva. Saliva contains two components. Component 1 is it secretes the proteolytic enzymes. We call it as proteases or pepsin, which is responsible for conversion of protein molecules into simpler amino acids. So, breakdown of the proteins takes place by the help of proteases secreted in the saliva. Okay. The second important compound is the mucin. Mucin is the compound or enzymatic compound which is responsible for bringing the slimy nature for the food and makes the food very soft. So, breakdown of proteins making the food soft, both is brought about by the compounds present in or components present in the saliva, which we call it as proteolytic enzymes, proteases and mucin enzymes. This pharyngeal wall of the body, generally when we look at it, is highly muscular. Even they can expand, they can contract like the mouth cavity. They have a wider space so that all these enzymes that are poured into the food will mix the food. Proteases will act upon the proteins, break it into amino acids, and mucins will make the food slimy and brings about softening of food. This soft food now is thrown from dorsal chamber of pharynx into ventral chamber down. So, ventral chamber's function here is that it just acts as a conducting chamber. Conducting refers to it helps in the easier or smoother movement of the food from the pharynx to the next region of the digestive system. So, pharynx acts as the organ of not only the digestion of proteins and making the food soften, but also helps in the process of suction pumping. So, pharynx acts as a sucking and pumping organ during the feeding also. So, it creates a pressure. When the pharynx muscles will contract, it will create a pressure on the upper part of the buccal cavity. The buccal cavity will it becomes wider and takes in the food. So, it is an organ which can be used as suction pumping organ during the feeding. So, hence the organ of the pharynx is called as the most effective organ of the digestive system in the earthworm. Now, the pharynx is followed by the part called as the esophagus. Pharynx continues into the structure of esophagus. It is a small narrow tube which is very thin. It is present between 5th and 7th segment, and it is also conducting part. Mean to say, it will just allow the food to pass from one part to the other part of the digestive system. So, esophagus is followed by the part of digestive system called as gizzard. So, the food whatever is digested in the pharynx is collected and it is sent to the gizzard by means of this conducting organ called as the pharynx. So, pharynx acts as the conducting organ here. Students, remember, pharynx does not involve in any of the secretion because it has no glands in it. So, that is the importance of esophagus. Sorry students for the inconvenience. The next important part that we have in the digestive system of earthworm is gizzard. It's a special part. When you look at in the diagram, its representation itself is given as a bulbous structure with long fold-like structures attached to it. So, this particular organ is present between 8th and 9th segments of the digestive canal. It is made up of muscles which are very large in its number. So, it is highly muscular. The shape of it is oval. It is very thick walled organ. When you look at the inner surface of this particular gizzard, it is lined with the structure of dead tissue referred as the cuticle. Because of the cuticle in the inner lining, the gizzard structure becomes very hardest part for the complete digestive canal of the earthworm. So, which is the hardest part of the digestive canal? It is this particular cuticle lining of the gizzard. It is made up of chitinous teeth-like projections in it. So, you have gizzard, it has got the cuticle has got chitinous means strong, very hard, teeth-like projections projecting inside. It helps in grinding of the soil particles and the decaying leaves. So, it acts like a grinder system. Students remember, the gizzard is commonly called as a masticatory organ because it helps in crushing the food. So, muscles of the gizzard, which is highly muscular part, which brings about the pushing of the muscles towards the inner surface, so that when the inner lining of the cuticle of gizzard, when they come in contact, the food that is present in between the cuticular wall lining of gizzard will be crushed. So, it will be crushed into fine paste. So, crushing or grinding or mastication is brought about by the part called as gizzard. So, what is the function of gizzard? It is mastication or crushing of food. So, the gizzard is made up of only one type of muscles which we call it as circular muscles. Because of the circular muscles, when they act like this, when all muscles of circularly pleasant position, when they act on the food, they crush the food, okay, and hence the mastication process takes place. So, after grinding, the food is now thrown from gizzard into the next part called as the stomach. Students, stomach is a very short, highly vascular, mean to say richly provided with the blood vessels, tubular structure that extends between 9th to 14th segment. So, 9th to 14th segment includes a thin, narrow tubular structure which is richly provided with the blood vessels. There are three pairs of calciferous glands present in this particular part of stomach between the segment number 10 to 12. So, 10th segment, 11th segment, 12th segment. These three segments have got the glands in them, okay, inside the stomach part. These glands are called as calciferous glands. They produce carbonate of lime. In simple terms to say, calcium carbonate. This calcium carbonate, when it's added to the food, we know the earthworm will feed on the soil particles, and soil will contain humic acid commonly. So, this humic acid compound is neutralized by the calcium carbonate secreted by these calciferous glands. So, that acid and a base is calciferous glands production, which we call it as the carbonate, and acid is the humic acid. Both are mixed up to bring in a reaction of neutralization. So, this is called as calcification process. Students, remember, neutralization of the food is brought about by the secretions of the stomach called as carbonate of lime by calciferous glands. So, this phenomenon of neutralization of humic acid and the carbonate compound is called as calcification. So, glandular cells in the stomach are also seen, which are responsible for the secretion of proteolytic enzymes. But remember students, already proteolytic enzymes are secreted by the pharynx, where maximum part of the digestion of proteins has done in the pharynx itself. So, whatever left out proteins are seen, such proteins are digested in the proteolytic enzyme secreted by the stomach here. So, now the stomach continues down to the part of the intestine. So, food is now thrown into the part of intestine. Intestine is very special. It is a long, very wide, thin-walled tube which extends from 15th segment to the last segment. If an earthworm has got 120 segments in it, from 15 to 120 segments of the body, it will have the part of digestive system called as intestine alone. So, you can just imagine which is the longest part of the digestive canal. It is this intestine, because it starts from 15 segment, ends up almost with the last segment. And this is the part which involves in the process of actual digestion and absorption. When you look at the mouth and buccal cavity, their function is ingestion. Pharynx, when we look at it, its function is digestion of proteins. Then it is followed by esophagus, then gizzard. They help in further crushing of the soil particles to release the nutrients. Now, that continues into stomach, where stomach will synthesize the enzymes of proteins to break down proteins, whatever is left out, and they neutralize the food. This neutralized food and totally digested food now is thrown into this longest part of the digestive canal called as intestine. So, intestine does the two important functions. Number one, digestion as well as absorption. The digestion process is brought about by enzymes such as proteases, which are responsible for conversion of proteins into amino acids. They also secrete amylases, which will convert the starch molecules into glucose or maltose molecules. So, carbohydrate metabolism takes place by amylase. Then, cellulase is an enzyme which will convert cellulose into glucose. Similarly, chitinase will convert digestion of chitin part of the exoskeleton of insects that they feed on the dead matter of insects. Then lipases, which will convert the fats into fatty acids or glycerol compounds. So, most of the enzymes of protease, amylase, cellulase, chitinase, lipase, etc. are produced by the intestinal gland. When we look at the inner lining of this intestine part, it shows finger-like projections or folds. Each of this fold is ciliated, it has a ciliated epithelial lining. It is highly vascularized, meant to say supplied with the blood vessels, and it is glandular, it has secretions. These folds that are seen in the inner lining of intestine are called as villi, plural, villus singular. So, you might have learnt about this particular concept in your lower standards related to the intestine of human beings. So, there are a number of finger-like folds which are seen in the inner lining of intestine called as villi. Earthworms do have villi. But speciality here is that towards dorsal side, dorsal means upper, the upper side. If you have a tube of intestine, if you consider this is the upper side, the tube within towards the upper side area shows one of the microvillus grows into the cavity of the intestine. In simple terms to say, you have many number of finger-like foldings of intestine inside, but one in the dorsal side remains a large sized intestinal villus, and this elongated villus part is called as typhlosular. Students, remember, typhlosular refers to elongated finger-like projection of villus seen towards mid-dorsal side of the intestine. And this structure of typhlosular starts from 27th segment to the last, but the previous to the last 25 segments. So, removing 25 segments in the lower part, last part, from 27 to the last, but leaving 25 segments, whatever segments are seen. So, that is the position of typhlosular. To make it the concept easier, let us say the earthworm has got 100 segments. So, from 27th segment onwards the typhlosular is seen. Exclude 25, it refers to 75th. So, 27th to 75th segment will have intestine portion provided with the typhlosular at its mid-dorsal side. So, that is the importance of typhlosular. Wherever you find typhlosular, it is nothing but a very large microvillus or villi structure which has got ciliated lining, highly vascularized, helps in more absorption. So, nutrients of the food is much absorbed by this typhlosular. So, absorption process is facilitated by the structure of typhlosular, which starts from 27th segment excluding the last 25 segments. So, typhlosular you can imagine by looking at the image or diagram towards the left side down. The centralmost part, it is a cross section of earthworm's body. Centralmost part, which is half moon shaped or what to say horseshoe shaped, that is the intestine. So, you can see one elongated part at mid dorsal side, that is the typhlosular, which is provided with the blood vessels, involves in more of absorption of nutrients. So, this typhlosular starts from which segment? 27th of the intestine. So, from 15 to 26 this typhlosular is not seen. From 27th to excluding the last 25 segments, whatever is the part seen, there typhlosular is seen. Okay, again from last 25 segments of the body, when we look at it, does not show the structure of typhlosular. So, that is about the importance of typhlosular. Students, when we look at this typhlosular structure, it will divide the complete part of the intestine into three parts. The part where the typhlosular is located, which is that from 27 to excluding the last 25, the central part, that is called as typhlosular region. And part which is seen in front, you know, intestine starts from 15th segment onwards. So, but typhlosular will start from 27th segment onwards. So, between 15 and 27, whatever the segment is there, that is called pre-typhlosular region. From 27 to excluding the last 25 segments, the part whatever you have of intestine is called typhlosular region, because that part of intestine contains the part of typhlosular in it. And last part where the intestine shows last 25 segments without the typhlosular is called as post-typhlosular region. Students, to make this concept simple, you have intestine starting from 15 to the last. Some central portion has got typhlosular in it, some mid portion. This mid portion we call it as that has typhlosular, we call it as typhlosular region. The frontal portion, the front portion of this typhlosular part of intestine is called pre-typhlosular, and the back portion or posterior part we call it as post-typhlosular region. Okay? So, that is about the importance of typhlosular here. Now, the pre-typhlosular region, as we have understood, it starts from 15 segment to 26 segment, and this particular region can be easily demarcated, we can easily identify it. You know how? At the region of 26 and 25 and 26. There extends wing-like projections. You can see that in the diagram down towards the right side. So, in the region of intestine after stomach, you have two wing-like structures. They are nothing but extensions of the intestine laterally. These structures will extend forward, means to say it will move towards the anterior region till 22nd or 23rd segment. So, it starts from 25 to 26 segment onwards, laterally it grows, gets into the till the region of 22nd or 23rd segment. And these extensions of intestine are called as intestinal CK. What you call it is intestinal CK. The importance of this intestinal CK is it is the part of the secretory function or glandular function. It synthesizes amylases which will bring down which will bring in the carbohydrate metabolism, nothing but breaking down of starch into glucose. So, carbohydrates are digested with the help of enzymes secreted by this intestinal CK. Students, remember intestinal CK starts at which region? 26th segment. So, from 15 to 26 segment, where you find the intestinal CK, that region of intestinal region we call it as pre-Typhlosular region. Are we able to understand? Are we able to understand? So, pre-Typhlosular region is the intestinal part which starts from 15 till 26 segment. At 26 segment, there is a forward lateral growth of extensions called as the intestinal CK, which synthesizes enzymes for the carbohydrate metabolism. The second part we have is Typhlosular region. It is the middle portion of the second part of intestine, extends from or starts from 25th segment till leaving the last 25 segment region. It has got the villi structure, finger-like projections of small size and one larger structure of villus which is seen towards mid dorsal side called as typhlosular. So, you have typhlosular as well as villi together in the region as the intestinal lining inside. It helps in much of absorption of the nutrients. Students, remember, as we have understood, it is highly vascular part, glandular part, and it increases the absorption process for the intestine. So, it will start from the region or segment present immediately below the intestinal CK, that is 27th segment. The last segment that we have here is post-Typhlosular region. Students, remember, post-Typhlosular region starts is considered as the region of the last 25 segments of the body of earthworm. So, last 25 segments of the body of earthworm we call it as the intestinal part of post-Typhlosular region. So, this region is also called as rectum. Reason is that it stores the waste. The undigested waste will be stored in this particular region of the intestine. So, common function of rectum. Hence, post-Typhlosular region is also called as rectum. Students, remember, this region does not have both the villi and typhlosular. So, pre-Typhlosular region has only villi, Typhlosular region has both villi and typhlosular, and in the region of post-Typhlosular, both the villi and typhlosular are absent. And here the food which is converted into the fine paste after the complete absorption remains as waste. That waste is stored and later is thrown out of the body through the opening of anus, and that content which are thrown out are called as castings. Students, remember, castings are nothing but the excretory waste of the digestive canal or undigested waste of the digestive canal which is thrown out through the anal part. So, that is about the importance of post-typhlosular region. Coming on to the last part of the digestive system, that is anus. It is a round or vertical aperture present in the last segment called anal segment or pygidium. Students, remember, this is the opening through which the undigested waste are thrown out of the body in the form of worm castings. So, the waste of digestive canal that comes out of the earthworm is called as what? Castings. So, this castings that comes out will be thrown out in the form of small round ball or pellets, is how what you see in the upper image or diagram. So, black color round mass or balls of castings are thrown out, and this is very specific to particular species of the earthworm, and they help in tracing the earthworm. So, wherever you find castings, based on the type of castings, and we can easily make out the species as well as the tracing of the earthworm, trailing of earthworm. So, that is about the digestive system of the earthworm. Now, let us understand the MCQs after we going through the concept of digestive system of earthworm. Shall we start? Question 1. The Typhlosular in earthworm is related to what particular process here? Respiration, excretion, absorption, reproduction. We know Typhlosular is an extended microvillus which increases the absorptive surface for the earthworm. So, it is definitely C, absorption. Question 2. In earthworm, mouth is located on which of this particular segment? Prostomium, peristomium, protostomium, none of this. It is present on the first segment called peristomium. So, answer is B. Question 3. Chromophil cells are found around pharyngeal gut of which of the region? So, it is D, pharynx, salivary gland cells. Question 4. Which part of digestive system secrete digestive enzymes in the annelids? Of all these 4 parts, mouth does not secrete, stomach also does not secrete much of the enzymes. Here the question is secretes digestive enzymes, but stomach will secrete it has calciferous glands which will help in calcification or neutralization of the food. Very less quantity of proteolytic enzymes are secreted, but when you look at the intestinal CK present in the 26th segment as forwarded wing-like extensions of intestine responsible for synthesis of amylase enzymes which helps in carbohydrate metabolism. So, of all the 4, the answer should be D, intestinal CK. Question 5. Earthworms do not have teeth to grind their food. So, which is the organ that is involved in the process of mastication of food? It is B, gizzard. Question number 6. Occurrence of earthworm in soil is indicated by. How will you know that the earthworm species is present in that particular location? By looking at the holes or dry soil. It is by looking at the balls of castings, the waste of digestive canal that are thrown out. So, answer should be A, balls of castings. Fine students, what is the outcome of today's session? We have understood about the digestive system of earthworm and physiology related to it also. So, reference books includes invertebrate zoology by Verma, then Jordan and Verma, and even modern textbook zoology by Kotpal, invertebrate zoology by Kotpal also you can refer. So, these are all few of the websites which I have visited to collect the information and images here. Students, if you have any doubts related to this particular concept, feel free to text them to my personal WhatsApp number, or even you can make calls, or even you can text the mails to my email ID. This question on digestive system of earthworm is important for 10 marks. A major question can be asked. And for 1 mark questions, most of the parts, the individual part of it can be asked. So, try to go through the concept, understand it. If you have any doubts and queries, please post them to my WhatsApp number. Thank you all. Wish you a very happy day ahead.